Okay. Imagine an onion. Now imagine peeling that onion one layer at a time, layer by layer. We are closer to the center and the heart of the onion. And our relationships as people are much the same. The deeper we go into them, the more we expose ourselves. So my name is Peyton. Today I would like to talk to you guys about the social penetration theory. Social penetration is developed by Erwin Altman and Thomas Taylor, and it compels insight for understanding the progression of relationships by means of self-disclosure. However, it also faces critiques for its limitations regarding modern and culturally diverse communication. In a world where strong interpersonal relationships is key to success, it is important to understand how intimacy develops and improves the way that we communicate with others. Through extensive research and source analysis, I have examined the functionality of this theory and how it is relevant to today. In this speech, I will provide the origin of the theory, the concepts and functionality of this theory, and its relevancy to today. Let us begin by discussing where this theory came from and who created it. Social penetration theory was developed by scholars who were interested in the scientific study of relationship development through self-disclosure. And who were these scholars, you might ask? Well, it was Erwin Altman and Thomas Taylor. And they introduced this theory in a book called Social Penetration, the Development of Interpersonal Relationships in the year 1973. Their background in psychology and social behavior very strongly shaped their theory's focus. So Altman was a social psychologist and with interest in environment and interpersonal behaviors. Taylor was also a psychologist, and he focused on behavioral dynamics in communication. An article by Zimbabwe explains that together they aim to explain how relationships progress using a layered model of personality. The onion model, which we just mentioned, was a metaphor that was used to represent the gradual peeling and pulling back of personal layers within conversation. So now that we understand the origin of this theory, let us explore how it is implemented into our interpersonal relationships. Social penetration theory explains that development through increasing levels of self-disclosure. The theory is specifically applied to close relationships, meaning friendships, romantic interests, or close professional bonds. The hypothesis specifically emphasizes the intimacy develops over a gradual period of time, and the deepness of sharing must be reciprocated by both parties. A textbook written by scholars West and Turner tells us that communication will start with public facts like names, hobbies, and interests, and then it will eventually deepen into things like emotions, fears, and goals and values. So the process contains 4 stages, and they are orientation, exploratory effective exchange, and stable exchange. In an article written by Griffin, Ledbetter, and Sparks, explains that while the goal of social penetration is for both parties to open up, revealing too much too soon can cause people to feel uncomfortable and can seem invasive. So while this theory is useful, it is important for us to consider its weaknesses and whether it is still fit in today's world. That being said, the social penetration theory has limitations and is in need of adaptations to consider modern communication. According to Stella Tingtumi in one of her books, she said that the theory does not always apply to diverse cultures, being that being open is not always the norm. So, for example, in collectivist societies, those are communities that value the needs of the entire group rather than the needs of individual people. So these kinds of societies are not going to value openness as much or in the same ways that the others would. And also, in a modern world, we collectively have a very high level of communication over online media. So in a journal written by Carpenter and Green, they found that on social media, people disclose personal information at a completely different way that we do in real life and in person. So people will often disclose their information publicly and very quickly without even expecting anything in return. So we have seen that while social penetration theory gives plenty of insight and tips for how we can grow our relationships, it has some blind spots that we may need to consider. We looked at the origins of the theory, how it relates to self-disclosure in relationships, and finally how modern scholars critique it for being culturally narrow and lacking digital context. Altman and Taylor's theory laid a solid foundation for understanding relational development. However, it needs revision to remain relevant to our diverse and tech-driven, ever-changing world. So the next time you open up to someone, consider this theory and how many layers of yourself that you're peeling back and opening up, and also consider how many layers that person is opening up.